Let us discuss the difference between temporary and permanent. A patient is in the hospital, very sick, and he's connected to the life support machine and it goes on a flat line. The doctor indicates to the nurses that we need the shock machine, and the doctor calls the nurse and they come and they shock the patient. And the patient is revived, and now they want to see what is happening. They are looking for treatment for the patient. Now, would you imagine if when the doctor called the nurses for the shock machine, the nurses shocked the patient revived, shocked the patient, but held it on the patient for 5 or 10 minutes. So the same remedy that we use to bring back something to life, if it is too intensive, if it lasts for too long, it will end up killing the same patient that we're trying to revive. Mr. President, I hear many talks of the statistics, and people say, okay, since the state of emergency was administered across St. James, we lost less lives, and crime fell by 70%. Now, crime fell in St. James by 70%, but crime spilled over to Hanover. Crime spilled over to Westmoreland. So that now, Mr. President, we come back here today and we say that let us implement a state of emergency across all those 3 parishes. Now, what is the objective? What is the objective? The objective is that we need a crime plan. We need a plan that when we shock this patient and we get the body back to life, we need a plan to bring this patient out of the hospital. Businesses in Montego Bay, not just big business. I'm not talking about the KFC and the Pier 1. I'm talking about my good friend Skinny, who sells soup on the road. Now, coming from, I have to go to Montego Bay most weekends. And whilst the state of emergency was in play, I went to Mobe. Now, when I went to Montego Bay, I wanted to buy a roast fish from Skinny. KFC was open. I could have easily bought chicken, but I purchased KFC for lunch. I purchased KFC the day before. So today I wanted fish. Skinny fish. Now, whilst I was there waiting on the fish to be roasted, I was waiting on the fish to be roasted. Then came the armed forces. Boy, we not tell you to pack up your cat and left long time. We not tell you to pack up your cat and come off our road a long time. No, I was there. I needed this fish. And I was hungry. It was about not too late. I can't remember the exact time, but 8, somewhere around there. Now, the point is, Mr. President, is that whilst the state of emergency has saved some lives in St. James, it has led to an increase in murders, killings in other parishes, as well as it has suppressed severely business activity. Now, what do we want to achieve? Okay, we lost 70% in terms of numbers, or we gained 70% more in terms of less people dying. But in terms of economics, business is suppressed. Business is suppressed. We sound like a set of bald men quarreling over a comb without objective. Because what I'm seeing here is that though we discuss the state of emergency, we are not discussing a crime plan. The first thing, Mr. Senator, the displacement of the criminals from one parish to other puts burden on other parishes. Next year we will come and say we had a state of emergency in St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland. We need a state of emergency in Trelawney, St. Elizabeth, and St. Anne.
And they'll go back to Montego Bay.
If needed. Why is it going to be needed? It's going to be needed because we have not figured out a clear way of approaching solving crime. How are we going to treat the crime that leaves Montego Bay and end up in Hanover, that leaves Montego Bay and end up in Westmoreland? We say, okay, we need a state of emergency in Hanover, we need a state of emergency in Westmoreland. Is that a solution?
No.
That is not a solution. So when we have crime now in Montego Bay, Hanover, and in Westmoreland, we'll use a state of emergency now for St. Elizabeth. We have to be real about the objectives. My second concern, Mr. President, is that when we declare a state of emergency, putting into context, a sensible thinking criminal is going to say, okay, there's a state of emergency in St. James, let me go to Trelawney. A sensible thinking criminal is going to say that there's a state of emergency in Hanover, let me go to St. Elizabeth. A sensible thinking criminal is going to say that there is a state of emergency in Westmoreland, let me come to Kingston. Now, is this how we want to approach dealing with national issues? Because that is not a solution. What we want to achieve is crime reduction. But at the same time, crime does not affect dead bodies, it affects the economics of the country, and it is our aim. And you will agree that we want the country to grow. The country cannot grow if we suppress economic activity in key areas. I'm a teacher, I know, and I request from my students undivided attention.
Yeah, man, teach them.
Undivided attention.
Remember,
Remember, we are not from Montego Bay, many of you, so I think we should use the time to listen and understand the socio-economic conditions before we begin to rebut. Now, many of these people who work in the hotel industry, they work on shifts. So you have one shift leaving 3 o'clock, a next shift leaving 11 o'clock, a next shift leaving 7 o'clock. These people who leave at 11 o'clock, they have to go home. It's not the crime that is affecting them. It is the harassment from the police and the soldiers, the ID, the this, the that, the interrogation that they have to go through. And this is what we have to address. It's a real thing. The criminals know that the police are on the road, so they will never go on the road. It's a common sense. Common sense. Criminal hide and kill people, man. The criminals are one step ahead. One step ahead. I think politics should be a game that we play to uplift the people. I don't think politics should be a game that we try to outwit the people to our own benefit. Mr. President, it worries me why the government are so adamant to suppress the rights of its citizens who are its major concern. And we look at many instances. The government appears as if they are always, whenever a problem arises, they are always more willing to suppress the rights of innocent Jamaicans. We saw it in the first state of emergency. We saw it with the attempt to pass the NIDS, and we will continue to see it if we have one more state of emergency. Liverpool football team has a problem with weeds in the grass. Weeds in the grass on the field. How do they solve that problem? They take out the weeds, plant them somewhere else, and spray on the grass. They leave the weeds and spray the entire thing. How do we solve the problem? We must figure out a way how to get the weed from the grass without affecting the grass. It can be done. Where I reside, we have received tremendous success from our Peace Through Sports initiative. Young people in Mount Salem wanted to play football. We decided that we wanted to give them some futsal. They said they would not play if it was not a night league. They wouldn't play. No man, Zozo is there. Zozo gave us the ability to let the league run and operate. Why? Because they did not run the people home at 6 o'clock. We needed to play until 9 o'clock. Yeah, Mr. President, it was an initiative by the Valley Foundation. Now, we are moving, Mr. Speaker, from the macro to the micro. Mr. President, from the macro to the micro. It is these same initiatives that has helped to bring peace in Mount Salem. It has helped that boys who were from the the top of the road, who were against boys from the bottom of the road, could come together and play sports in good camaraderie. Mr. President, crime pays for a lot of these young people. And until we substitute the crime that pays with activities that pays, crime will persist. And we have to take this into consideration. We could have 1 million Zozos, we could have 1 million state of emergencies. As long as crime pays more than legitimate activity, then crime will become a necessary part of these young people's day-to-day activities. The fundamental issue here is that we're looking at the type and the quality of leadership that is afforded to our country. And as Napoleon once said, that he's placing his iron fist in a velvet gloves, and that lends us to a lot of interpretation. Do we want to rule and govern the people of Jamaica with an iron fist? Do we want to strangle their rights and restrain them? So we move the SOE from 1 parish to 3 parishes. And if I'm using a geometric progression, it will soon move to 5 parishes. It will move to 8 parishes, then it will be the entire country. It will soon become like Sierra Leone. We don't have any blood diamonds here fighting over, Mr. President. All we have is decent, law-abiding citizens who are like the fresh green grass on Liverpool's field, and they are contaminated by a few weeds. Do we suppress the rights of the people just to quarantine a few troublemakers? Do we suppress the rights of an entire nation just to give rise or to pay attention to a few bad eggs in our bucket? I say that, Mr. President, we have to think about carefully how we lead a nation of such remarkable people. Do we want to use force to force them to use force against us? Or do we want to teach them the importance of finesse, the importance of love, compassion, and care? Do we want to teach them that you will not only have to earn an income from this activity, you can earn an income from this activity, your life can become more prosperous doing this activity? We need to place this iron fist of a SOE, Mr. President, in a velvet gloves. Community-based policing. Community initiatives. We need our police officers to take off that arrogance, the jacket of arrogance that they are wearing now, and put on short pants again. We need our police officers to become decent, upstanding citizens, people who respect the rights of the lower levels of community. We need to put a SOE up by Cherry Gardens and Norbrook, where some of you live. We need to have a SOE up by Cherry Gardens or Norbrook, where some of you live. When you exit your gate, you should be interrogated. We want to see your ID. We want to know where you're going. We want to know where you're coming from. Open your bag, boy. Make we see why in there. Open your bag. Now, are any of us here willing to go through that? Are any of us willing to suppress ourselves to that every day? Boy, want to up on the road 7 o'clock, go to bed. That's how they talk to big people, grown people who have rights and freedom, human rights. We have to be careful. We have to force ourselves to rid ourselves of force. The slavery type economy that we are used to, where we have to use a big broad belt to beat people to obey, is a thing of the past.